Hi, I am Lucas, and today I want to talk about not being attached to one's ideas while still having a design philosophy. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that it's important for the game designer to be flexible with ideas because there's always a lot to implement. There's a lot of ideas that you might have on how to do something. And usually the initial ideas are not the best ones, and they're definitely not the ones that make it into the final product because things are changing all the time. And that's how you want it to be. You want your initial ideas to evolve. You want them to be iterated on, and you want them to be better by the end of the development process. So you can't be too attached to your initial ideas. You need to be able to have a bunch, maybe have 10, and then discard 9 and pick the best one, not necessarily the first one and be like, oh, I had this first idea, I'm going to implement that and it's going to be great. Probably it's not going to be great. At the same time, you do want to have a general vision or a design philosophy that is going to allow you to evaluate those ideas. And you probably don't want that philosophy or that thesis to change throughout the project. You probably want one vision that you start with and you end with, and you never change that. So it is a subtle thing where you have to be very inflexible with a few of the ideas in your game and extremely flexible with another set of ideas. So the hard part is, how do you know which is which? How do you know when to be flexible and when to be inflexible? And the question is, you kind of have to feel it out. There's no rule. And game design is an art form, and this is part of the artistry. You gotta feel it out. I don't think there's a way around that, but I can try to expand more. So for Historialis, I have a few design pillars, as people say, and these are 3 things that are unchanging from the beginning of the project until now and are going to stick around for the future. So those design pillars are historical realism or accuracy, whatever you want to call that. So the game is historical and not just playing with history, toying with history, but really trying to understand history and convey what the past was like through its mechanics. So that's the first one, historical realism. Another one is deep simulation. And what that means is, well, it can mean different things for different people, but it's easy to see what it's not. It's not a shallow game. It's not a pond where you have the surface mechanics that don't really go in depth into things. So there's sometimes you get the simulation games where there are a lot of elements, maybe there are a lot of resources, but they don't really have the depth under them. So that's not the case with Historialis. There is actual depth to the simulation, and how that shows can be tricky to portray, but I do think that the term, when you say deep simulation, people immediately know what you're talking about, though, even though it's hard to explain. It's like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts and they interact with each other. The other pillar is emergent stories. So out of the mechanics, out of interacting with this simulation, you get stories that are personal to you, that only you were going to experience in the way that you experience, because they're not scripted, they're not pre-made. And you have a lot of games that have explored that, like Dwarf Fortress, RimWorld, even The Sims to some extent. It's like more of this sandboxy, emergent stories thing. And I could come up with more ideas for what Historialis could be. And it's like, oh, it could be this, could be that, and add to those pillars. But I think that would be a terrible idea, because this is the unchanging part. This is the thesis that I'm going for. There are a few things added on to that as well. For example, on the UI UX department, I want it to be very simple to interact with, while at the same time still having that depth underneath the simple interactions. I don't want it to be a hard game to play. There's that old term, easy to play, hard to master, which I think most people try to aim for, although I don't know how serious people are about it. But I do believe in this idea of easy to play and not necessarily hard to master, but I do like the depth underneath it being as easy as possible to play. Because when you're doing a deep simulation, it's not trivial to make something easy to play. And I get it when it actually comes to implementing stuff. I have a lot of implementation ideas, and those I do put them in a kind of survival of the fittest, right? I have the ideas, I think through them, and I try to kill them. Like when an idea comes to me on how to implement something that I want to implement, I try to destroy the idea, because I need to battle test it, right? And ideally, you want to kill an idea as early as possible, because you don't want to spend too long on something that's not going to work out. And most ideas are not going to work out. So the quickest way to kill an idea is in your head as soon as you have it. So you might have an idea, and then you just say, okay, this doesn't fit this pillar, or this is not going to work because of this other problem. You really want to kill your ideas if you can. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're like, well, this could work. And then you just keep it around. So that's another thing. You don't want to implement it right away most of the time, because you already have this backlog of ideas that you have to implement. So if you have a new one, you want it to simmer. You let it simmer. You leave it there for a while, and you see if it keeps screaming at you, like, oh, implement me, I'm a great idea. And if it doesn't keep screaming, if it just stays there and it's an okay idea, maybe it could work, maybe not, then it's also dead. Like, you couldn't destroy it right away, but it doesn't scream, implement me, and then it just dies that way. And that's a good thing, because that means that the idea was just okay, but it wasn't great. And you don't want okay ideas to make it into the game as well. Another way of evaluating the quality of ideas is to consider how many problems they solve. You want your ideas to solve a whole bunch of problems at once. So if you have an idea that solves one problem, that's okay. If it's extremely easy to implement and it solves that problem perfectly, great. But if it solves one problem, it's hard to implement, it would take a while, maybe it's not such a great idea. But if one idea solves like 3 problems, 5 problems all at once with a single implementation, that's a great idea. So those are the ones that I really love, that I really look for. Like when I have this idea that it seems to solve everything, or it solves at least 2-3 problems at once, that's a big bang for your buck. So in conclusion, have your pillars that you don't change. You set them at the start of the project and you end with them. So make sure they're good, because you're not going to iterate on those. For ideas on how to implement stuff in the game, you want to kill those as early as possible. So when you have an idea, try to destroy that idea, see what's wrong with it, why it's not going to work. If you can't kill it, then let it sit. And if it survives the test of time and you really still, a few days later, you still really want to implement that idea is screaming, implement me, or it seems to solve 2-3 problems at a time, it solves all the problems in the game, then those are the ideas that you really want to work on. But 90, maybe 95% of ideas, they really don't work out, and you don't want to continue with those. So you can't be attached to your ideas if you want to make a good game. You gotta let them go. You gotta leave space for the fresh new ideas that are going to solve more problems, that are going to be better than your initial ones. I hope this made some sense and it was helpful. All right. Thank you.